going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of JT Sports Live. I'm your host, JT, here to give my reactions to Week 10 of the NFL season. The Detroit Lions come back from 19 down to improve to 8-1 with their win over the Houston Texans on Sunday Night Football. We're going to lead the show off with that. Then we got to expose what a lot of us don't want to admit about the Chiefs. This team is just inevitable. How far can the Steelers go this year? They get a big win, 28-27 over the Washington Commanders. Does this win solidify them as a legitimate Super Bowl contender? The Colts have now lost two straight losses back-to-back with Joe Flacco as the starter. Is it time to go back to AR? The Cardinals, 31-6 beatdown that they put on the New York Jets. The Cardinals got to be the biggest surprise of the NFL season because this was a team that was in last place in the NFC West last year. The expectations were relatively moderate coming into this season, but right now they're winners of 4 straight. They're on top of the NFC West. I want to give some thoughts on Arizona's surprising season. And we got to continue to throw more salt to the wound on New York Jets fans. I don't have anything against Jets fans, really fine people, but it's just way too easy to make jokes about the current situation that the Jets are in right now with Aaron Rodgers. He's been a major cancer to that franchise. And the Chicago Bears, somebody do us all a favor and call Chicago PD for us because there is manslaughter taking place with how that coaching staff is treating Caleb Williams. It's just hard to watch a Bears game and just not feel a little bit of sympathy about the situation Caleb Williams is going through right now. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in wherever you're watching, YouTube, X, Facebook. Smash that like button, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we go live and when we drop new content. And check us out on all podcasting platforms, link down in the description down below. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from, the JT Sports Podcast is available. And let's jump into it. So the Detroit Lions overcome 5 Jared Goff interceptions and a 19-point deficit to defeat the Houston Texans 26-23 on Sunday Night Football. Jake Bates comes through in crunch time, banging a 58-yard field goal and a 52-yard game-winning field goal to help the Lions improve to 8-1 on the season. And like I said last week, the Detroit Lions, to me, are the best team in the NFL at the moment. They are playing some great football. And even when they aren't playing good football, with you being able to come back from 23-7 down, in spite of all of the gifts that Jared Goff was giving the Houston Texans, it shows how good of a team you are. The fact that your quarterback played one of the worst games of his career and you still came back scoring 19 unanswered shows you just how truly talented this Lions team is. And they might be the only team in the league that can stop the Chiefs from being able to three-peat this year. They have everything that you look for in the championship team. Not just talent, but they have that championship DNA. They have that grit. They have that toughness, that never say die attitude. No matter how ugly things get during a game, they always are going to find a way to come out victorious. And that's the sign of a great team. The Kansas City Chiefs have that same ability. They can get in the dogfights. They can play bad football and still walk away with the W because those are the qualities that championship teams have. It's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. And as long as you're coming away with these wins, it doesn't matter how you get them. It further strengthens why the Lions continue to be the most dominant team in the NFC conference at this moment. And the Houston Texans, you're in a really scary place offensively right now. Joe Mixon had 25 carries and only averaged 1.8 yards per attempt That's really bad. That shows how bad your offensive line is. CJ Stroud got sacked 4 times this game. 2 of those sacks were on him, but he was running for his life a good amount tonight. And he had 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions. One of them was really egregious. I guess he thought Tank Dell was wide open, and then out of nowhere, Carlton Davis comes and undercuts the route, picks it off. CJ Stroud has had a down year. There's no denying that. And moving forward, the Texans, it's not a sure thing that they're going to hold on to the AFC South because, maybe the Colts could figure some things out and turn their season around. Maybe the Jaguars could strike some fire and get hot. It's way too soon to just assume that the Texans have the AFC South locked up because this is the time of the year where we start to see teams who struggled the first half of the season start to get hot the second half of the season. The real football season begins around Thanksgiving. That's when the contenders start to separate themselves from the pretenders, and that's when teams that didn't start playing good football early start playing good football now because this is the final stretch. We're at the midway point of the season. This is when teams show you who they truly are. We still don't know what team the Texans are at this moment. Is this a team that's good enough to compete for the AFC? Maybe they can knock off Kansas City or the Baltimore Ravens, make it to the Super Bowl. Or are they going to be a one-and-done team in the playoffs? They're able to get into the dance because they win a weak division and then they get blown out in the wild card round. I still don't know what to make of the Houston Texans up to this point. This is their second straight loss. You lost Thursday night to New York Jets. I thought that was just a one-off thing because, even the best teams have a few games that they lose that make you go, how did that happen? But the Houston Texans, we are starting to see a lot of recurring issues pop up in a lot of their games. The offensive line struggling to protect CJ Stroud, struggling to open up holes in the run game. Joe Mixon has been the best player on Houston's offense all season. And when he's not going, that's when this offense normally tends to struggle. And I thought that Houston was going to end up blowing out Detroit when they got up 23-7 at halftime. I picked Houston to cover that 3.5-point spread, and for Detroit to just score 19 unanswered, it just really surprised me because you expect more out of a team that's coached by DeMeco Ryans. You expect more out of CJ Stroud, who had so many high expectations coming into this year, and you kind of have the feeling that with the way things have gone for the Texans the last couple of weeks, their season is about to spiral left. And even if they do make it to the playoffs, you're looking at a team that probably is a 9-8 team at best because I don't even know what teams on your schedule you can be trusted to beat at this point. Because although you are talented, even with the injuries that you've had to Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, you still do have a lot of depth at receiver. You got a really good defense. Your secondary played outstanding in this game. This is the best that you could play against the Detroit Lions with how hot this team has been as of late. The Houston Texans, it's not a good time to be a fan of this club because you have an identity crisis, and we don't know if you're going to be able to find out who you are when this season concludes. You can go into the off season and have major question marks about, is CJ Stroud the guy who can lead you to a Super Bowl? Do you have a Super Bowl caliber staff? Do you have to part ways with Bobby Slowick, somebody who was in a lot of talks to be a head coach during the off season? You just leave this game having more questions than answers about the Houston Texans, which is something that you don't want to be saying when you're at this point of the season. At this point, you should already know who you are as a football team. You had a players-only meeting to sort out some of the issues, and nothing still has improved with this team. So I'm really concerned about the Houston Texans moving forward. The Detroit Lions, however, they remain the team to beat, not only in the NFC, but in the NFL as well. I don't care if Kansas City's undefeated. Detroit, to me, is playing better football than what the Chiefs are. Yeah, they had a down game, but listen, if you can walk away with a win with your starting quarterback throwing 5 interceptions, you can't get picky about style points. All that matters is getting the victory, because if this is any other team whose quarterback throws 5 interceptions, they're getting blown out by at least 28 points. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Shout out to Attitude Pop 3. He says Chiefs got that black magic working for him. CJ started the season great, but after the first 5 games, he ain't been the same. Is it because Nico not there or something just looks off? Maybe that sophomore slump kicked in. Shout out to Mike is him. He says, yo, can't believe we was able to come back and win after Jared Goff threw 5 picks. Yeah, that was a great performance. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Wherever you're watching, Facebook, YouTube, X, share the stream, smash that like button if you enjoy, and give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast from. Apple, Spotify, Amazon. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Link is down in the description down below. You know, like Thanos, the Kansas City Chiefs are just inevitable. Nobody is going to be able to stop this team from three-peating. I was watching them play the Broncos today, and Bo Nix had the best game of his career up to this point. He was really impressive, and I was telling myself, okay, this is going to be the game Kansas City finally gets the L that they deserve. But some way, somehow, the Broncos find a way to blow it. They get a 35-yard chip shot to give the Chiefs their first L of the season. And, of course, Kansas City blocks it, and they find a way to get another lucky win. And at this point, I'm just going to admit what a lot of y'all want to admit, but you're just too stubborn to admit it. Kansas City is going to three-peat this year. Nobody is going to beat this team. After how you won against the Denver Broncos, there's no way in hell anybody's going to stop you this season. Okay, the Ravens, I love Lamar Jackson, but I don't trust their defense to stop Mahomes with the ball in his hands last if he has an opportunity to win the game. The only way Baltimore can take down Kansas City in the postseason is if LaMarvelous gets a chance to win the game and Mahomes has no time left to get the W. And the Houston Texans, they're not a Super Bowl caliber team. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're not a Super Bowl caliber team to me, only because anytime Mike Tomlin's defense goes up against an elite quarterback, they get carved up every single time. The Buffalo Bills, I don't trust them either. Josh Allen, he's been a little bit reckless with the football as of recently. They played Kansas City great in the regular season, but in the postseason, the fourth quarter, they just fall apart. And the Detroit Lions, as good as they've been, I don't trust them to beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl. I just can't see anybody stopping Kansas City. There's just something around this team that just makes them impossible to beat. I don't know what it is. Mahomes is playing the worst football of his career, and they still are undefeated. The defense could have an off game and still find a way to win. You thought that against the Buccaneers, they would have been able to get it done. And instead, it goes into overtime. Mahomes gets the ball first, and you already know what happens when that transpires. Kansas City ends up winning. There's nobody who can stop Kansas City this year. And to be quite honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Kansas City win 6 straight Super Bowls, because it just looks like right now there's a huge gap between them and the rest of the NFL. They're playing chess. The rest of the NFL is playing checkers. Everybody's trying to catch up to Kansas City, but they just can't, because you don't have Mahomes. You don't have that championship grit needed late in the fourth quarter to take this team down. You just need to accept that nobody's going to stop Kansas City this year. We might as well just cancel the season and give Kansas City the Super Bowl already. I know that You know, it's a little bit ignorant to say that because the game's got to get played and you never know what can happen on any given Sunday. But one thing I know that's not going to happen on any given Sunday is Kansas City losing, especially in the postseason. This team is unstoppable. When Thanos said he was inevitable, Kansas City was right behind them whispering it. They were saying, yeah, Thanos, you may be inevitable, but so are we. We got Mahomes. We got Andy Reid. We got the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. The Chiefs can beat you a multitude of different ways. If you want to play in a 13-10 defensive slugfest, Kansas City can beat you in that kind of game. If you want to get into a 48-42 shootout with Kansas City, they got no problem beating you that way neither. However you want to play Kansas City, whatever style of football you like to play, Kansas City can match you. There just is no stopping this team. They don't really have a weakness. On paper, they have weaknesses. Left tackle is a major concern. You know, like, it doesn't matter with Kansas City. When you play this team, there just is nothing that you can do to stop them. Now, they play Buffalo this upcoming Sunday. We're going to see if the Bills can give them their first loss of the season, but I'm not very confident it's going to happen. And I wouldn't be shocked if Kansas City ends up going 17-0 and being the first team in NFL history to do so, because right now, it doesn't matter if they play their best or their worst, they still find ways to win. And with how this game ended against the Denver Broncos, it showed me everything that I need to know about how the script has been written for how the season's going to end. The script writers, they're going to try to make it a little bit interesting. They're going to try to add some drama, some flair in there to throw us off a little bit. But we all know Kansas City's going to win this thing when it's all said and done. Nobody's stopping this team. This team has some voodoo magic around them, some dark magic. They got something going on because there's no way anybody could have predicted Denver getting the game-winning field goal blocked. Like, how the hell does that happen? I believe the NFL is somewhat rigged because you cannot have something like that occur in a situation like that without it being somewhat scripted. I know it's a crazy conspiracy, but when it comes to Kansas City, I'm not throwing anything off the table. If you think the refs are rigging these games in favor of Kansas City, I'm not going to say that you're wrong. I may not completely agree with you, but I'm not going to say that you're wrong. It's just that Kansas City, when they got to win the game, they find a way to do so. And now you got DeAndre Hopkins. Imagine how scary this offense is going to look if you get Marquise Brown come playoff time, because he's out for the entirety of the regular season, but he is going to be available come playoff time. And if you get the number 1 seed, you can get him fully healthy for a divisional round. And then you have D-Hop, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy. Kansas City will be damn near at full strength. There's no stopping this team this year. I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe Lamar Jackson can play a little bit of corner and safety for Baltimore, but just go ahead and chalk up the three-peat to Kansas City already. I don't even think we need to play out the rest of the year. We just need to go ahead and hand over the hardware. Maybe next season the Chargers can step up and Jim Harbaugh can have a little bit of a say in how much dominance the Chiefs are going to continue to have over this league, but You just can't beat Kansas City, man. You just can't. And I'm just tired of lying to myself every week that the Chiefs aren't going to win it all. When every week I watch them play, I find them do the impossible, pull a win out of the ass. And I'm just ready to admit the Chiefs are going to win it all for the 3rd straight time in a row. Shout out to Kate Roan. As always, we greatly appreciate it with the $5 donation. She says, powerful JT Sports Live. Can't believe how hot that Dallas dumpster fire is burning, man. And are the Cardinals good or are the Jets just that awful? She also says, you're not far out there bringing conspiracy to the convo about KC. If you're ever not sure, follow the money. Is what they say too. Yeah, I'm going to start following the money all right, because I definitely ain't trying to lose the money betting against KC. Now, oh boy. The Steelers are 7-2 after a 28-27 comeback win over Jaden Danielson of Washington Commanders. This win is the most impressive victory the Steelers have had up to this point, because before this win, the best teams that you beat were the Atlanta Falcons week 1 and the Denver Broncos. So for you to get a win over a Commanders team that right now they look like the second, third best team in the NFC at the moment, kind of shows that the Steelers are somewhat for real this year in terms of, they're going to be a playoff team. Now the question is, how far are they going to go once they get to the postseason? And what's been so impressive about Pittsburgh this year is that you now finally have a damn offense. For the last 3-4 years, this offense was boring to watch and really frustrating too. You had Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky going 3-and-out, 3-and-out, 3-and-out. It was a struggle just to get to the 17, 20 points. But now, with Justin Fields at quarterback for the first 5 weeks or the first couple of weeks, you were in a really good position. You were scoring 20 points per game. The offense was somewhat good enough for you to squeak out a couple of close wins. Yeah, you had a couple of close losses here and there, but Justin Fields had this offense looking efficient. But with Russell Wilson, he's taken this offense and cranked it up a notch. He's taken an efficient offense and turned it into a potent offense, because since Russell Wilson got the start over Justin Fields at QB, the Steelers have averaged 30 points per game. This is the most points the Steelers have averaged in the season since midway through the 2020 campaign, when, they started off undefeated and then the season went left after they lost to Alex Smith and the Commanders. This is the best team that Mike Tomlin has had in the last 7-8 years. Since they went to the AFC Championship a few years back with AB and Le'Veon Bell, and they got blown out by the Patriots, that's the last time I've seen a Steelers team as good as what they have this year. The defense is second in the league in points per game allowed. They're 9th in yards per game allowed. TJ Watt looks like he's about to claim another Defensive Player of the Year award. You got a lot of depth on that defensive line. Alex Smith got injured. Well, Alex Highsmith got injured, but you still do have Preston Smith, who you just traded for, Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi. The secondary has had its fair share of mishaps here and there, but for the most part, this has been a really fantastic defense that doesn't really have a lot of weaknesses. They are pretty good against the run. They're great against the pass. They can really harass the opposing team's quarterback. Jaden Daniels had his worst performance of the season in this game. And anytime Mike Tomlin goes up against a really good young rookie quarterback, most of the times his defenses get shredded. You remember what C.J. Stroud did to Mike Tomlin's defense last year. I was really impressed with how this defense performed. And the Commanders did drop 27, but really they only scored 20 because the Steelers kind of gifted them a touchdown when they went for a fake punt early in the game, which you can't get mad at the decision to go for it, because the Commanders were sending everybody after the punt to block it, and James Pierre was wide open, uncovered on the left side. So, of course, you got to take that. The opportunity is right there, and it's presenting themselves. I'm not mad at them for taking that kind of risk. And the Steelers are a team now that you don't feel worried if they get down multiple possessions. In years past, when the Steelers got down by 10 points or more, you knew the game was over. They had to keep everything close, and they have to make sure that no game turned into a track meet. The Steelers can win a high-scoring game now. I could see this offense being able to put 40 on somebody in the postseason. You traded for Mike Williams, who was a great addition. He didn't even get that much playing time today, but when he was on the field, he made the biggest play of the game that won it for Pittsburgh, getting that game-winning touchdown when Russell Wilson just threw an absolute beauty of a bomb to him. And now that you have Mike Williams and George Pickens, you got one of the best passing attacks in the league, because you got two wide receivers that are great at going up and winning those 50-50 balls, getting those big, crazy catches downfield that end up being SportsCenter top 10 highlights. The offensive line has improved. The run game has been really good. This is a balanced offense. They can beat you airing the football out downfield. They can beat you with the ground and pound. And what's even scary about Pittsburgh is that they're not even fully healthy yet. You're going to get a couple of guys back on the offensive line over the next couple of weeks. So with how good this team has looked this year, I can see Mike Tomlin ending his very long postseason drought. It's been about 8 years since Mike Tomlin has gotten a playoff win in Pittsburgh. That's going to change this year. I definitely expect you to be in the divisional round, but that's as far as I think the Steelers can go this year, because once you get to the second round of the playoffs, you're going to be going up against teams that have elite quarterbacks. And I don't trust Mike Tomlin's defense, regardless how good they look during the regular season, to slow down Lamar or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, because historically, Mike Tomlin's defenses don't perform well when they go up against elite quarterbacks. It's been like that since the beginning of time. But if this defense can actually, show up against a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson come playoff time, then yeah, they might be able to make a surprising Super Bowl run. Russell Wilson, I'll admit it, I was wrong about him. I thought that he was washed up. I thought that when the Steelers signed them on that veteran minimum deal after the Denver Broncos throwing them to the Wolves, they were getting pretty much washed up goods. But, he's been really fantastic. Yeah, he hasn't been lighting the world incredibly on fire. He hasn't looked like an MVP candidate, but he's definitely looked like a top 15 quarterback. There's a lot of quarterbacks right now that I would take Russell Wilson over. So for the Steelers, with how good this offense looks and with how good the defense has played at times, you can win a playoff game. But it's hard to imagine you making it to the AFC Championship or even to the Super Bowl with this team still not being able to slow down elite quarterbacks. And what can change my opinion, because I'm not married to the thought that the Steelers couldn't make a Super Bowl run. We still haven't seen this team play any opponent in the AFC North. They haven't played the Bengals, the Ravens, or even the Browns. And I want to see what they do against Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson before I'm ready to come to the conclusion that, okay, this is a championship caliber team. This is a playoff team, no doubt. They definitely are not going to be a one and done team. But, with how often Mike Tomlin's defenses have struggled against great quarterbacks, it's hard to see them making a deep playoff run. But if the Steelers get to the playoffs, they win a wild card game, I'll be satisfied with that. And I'm pretty sure the majority of Steelers fans will be satisfied with that as well, because it's been a long time coming since the Steelers got a playoff win. And it's been a lot of postseason disappointment out of this franchise the last couple of years. So to get a playoff win, rather it being a wild card round, divisional round, would be a successful season for Mike Tomlin. When the Indianapolis Colts made the decision to bench Anthony Richardson in favor of Joe Flacco, the reasoning was because Joe Flacco gave the Colts the best chance to win, right? Well, over these last 2 weeks, the Colts still haven't ended their losing streak. They now have lost 3 straight. 2 straight of those losses have come with Joe Flacco at the helm at quarterback. And he has a 2 to 4 touchdown interception ratio in his last 2 weeks as the starter. And now with you being 4-6, your season kind of on the brink of spiraling left, and you don't even come close to sniffing the postseason, it might be time for the Colts to just go back to the well and start Anthony Richardson. Look, if you're going to lose, you might as well lose with Anthony Richardson. Let him go out there, get some development, because this kind of play out of a veteran quarterback in Joe Flacco is unacceptable. I mean, early into the game today against the Buffalo Bills, the dude threw a pick 6. You don't expect your veteran quarterback that's damn near 40 years old to be having all these costly mistakes. And I think that us as fans, we got a little bit ahead of ourselves when it comes to Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco has now showed us that, he's a good backup. He's a decent starter bridge quarterback to get you through a few portions of the season if your starter goes down, but he's no savior. He's no Superman. He's not an elite quarterback. The way that we've been talking about Joe Flacco based off what he did last season with the Browns, leading them to the playoffs, and the brief success he had this season with Indianapolis, you would have thought this dude was a top 10, top 5 quarterback, but the last 2 weeks, Joe Flacco has come back down to earth in a really catastrophic way. You couldn't even muster an offensive touchdown against the Vikings. You struggled to score touchdowns against the Buffalo Bills today. Something has to give. Something has to change. You thought changing quarterbacks would get things heading back in the right direction, but all things have gotten this a little bit worse. You were more competitive when you had AR at quarterback than you were with Joe Flacco. As absurd as it is to say that, because we're talking about a guy in Anthony Richardson that was completing 44% of his passes. That's the lowest completion percentage that any starting quarterback has had in the last decade. But, I mean, with his athletic ability, how athletic he is running the football with that 6'5", 255-pound frame running 4.43, and you got Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, you're better off trying to win games just running the football with AR and Jonathan Taylor than you are just trying to win games slinging the pigskin 35, 40 times a game with Joe Flacco, because Joe Flacco throughout his career has had moments when he's looked good, but he's also had a lot of moments when he's been an average quarterback. And what I see out of Joe Flacco right now is an average quarterback. I don't see a quarterback that's going to be good enough to lead Indianapolis to the playoffs and recapture the magic that he had with the Browns last season. And what often gets overlooked about Joe Flacco's success last year in Cleveland was that the Browns didn't really play a lot of good teams when Joe Flacco was starting and he turned their season around. Their only wins against winning football teams with Joe Flacco being the starter were against the Houston Texans when they didn't have C.J. Stroud, and the Jacksonville Jaguars because they went 9-8, but they were nowhere close to being a playoff team. So Joe Flacco, what he did the tail end of last season, kind of is a little bit overinflated because, even in those games, he wasn't that great. I believe he had 13 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. It's not like the dude was playing out of this world. He was playing some good football for the expectations that he had. A guy coming fresh off the couch, not really playing football in a little bit of a while. It caught you off guard how well he played and how many games the Browns were winning. But the Browns also had a really good defense. The Colts defense isn't bad, but it's pretty decent. You got some really good players on that D-line. You got Kenny Moore in the secondary, one of the best slot corners in the game. The Colts got some talent on that squad, but you don't have a good enough squad to overcome having average quarterback play. And Shane Steichen, he's not that good as a head coach. He's one of those dudes who looks like he's a good offensive mind. He's a great coordinator, but when it comes to being a head coach, he looks a little bit too overwhelmed at times. Indianapolis, you might as well go back to Joe Flacco. You're on a 3-game losing streak. You're not winning with Flacco. The offense still looks stagnant. Go back to what was working. You were winning somewhat with Anthony Richardson. It's not like you were getting blown out in every single game that you played. You can win with that athletic ability. And at this point of the season, when you're going to be in a lot of cold weather games, you got to go on the road, running the football is really pivotal. And when you got that monster at running back and Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson in the backfield, it definitely brings a different element to your offense that defensive coordinators have the key on. And I get it that nobody really wants a quarterback that is struggling to complete over 50% of his passes, but at least with Anthony Richardson, he could go 9 of 25, but throughout of those 9 passes, turn into big plays, either a big 60-yard touchdown or a big play that puts you in scoring range. And you were better in the red zone with AR than what you were with Joe Flacco, in my opinion, because when you got a quarterback with that athleticism that Anthony Richardson has, he becomes a big weapon for you once you get into that red area. Because it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to throw the football, or are you going to give it to Jonathan Taylor, or are you just going to hand it off to that monster at QB? Anthony Richardson is like Derrick Henry playing quarterback damn near. So if I'm Shane Steichen, I will go back to AR. I would tell him, you know what, bro? Like, we thought we was going to sit you, let you develop for the rest of the season, but it turns out you actually give us the best chance to win anyway. And let's face it, the season isn't going to get any easier for the Indianapolis Colts. They got more tough teams to play on their schedule. You got the New York Jets coming up, which, although they're down and out like you are, they're a talented enough team where they could beat you in blowout fashion. So you might as well, if you're going to lose games, you rather lose them with Anthony Richardson, let the young guy get that development that he needs to grow. And you know, it turns out Joe Flacco isn't really that big of an upgrade. He's more accurate than Anthony Richardson, but he's making about the same amount of mistakes that Anthony Richardson was making. How much can AR learn from Joe Flacco? What is Anthony Richardson learning on the bench from Joe Flacco when the dude's throwing interceptions and pick sixes left and right? You feel me? I don't really think Anthony Richardson is learning that much from Joe Flacco. If anything, he's learning what not to do at quarterback from Joe Flacco. And the Joe Flacco story, it was good while it lasted, but now it's starting to get to the point where, you know, we've read enough of this story and we're ready to move on to something else. The Colts need to move on back to Anthony Richardson, because at this point of the season, you sat him for a few games. He learned his lesson about tapping out. He got all the rest that he needed on that bench over these last couple of weeks watching Joe Flacco play. Put AR back in at QB. At this point, you can't make the argument that he doesn't give the Colts a better chance to win than what Joe Flacco does when you still have yet to end your 3-game skid. You went from losing 2 in a row to now 3 in a row, and 2 out of your last 3 losses have come with Joe Flacco at quarterback. He hasn't been that good. Just go back to Anthony Richardson. The Arizona Cardinals are the biggest surprise of the NFL season up to this point, because last year they came in last place in the NFC West. They did show a lot of fight. They had a few upsets here and there with Joshua Dobbs at QB, and then when Kyler Murray came back, they were an even more feistier team. And going into this season, the expectations were fairly moderate. Nobody was expecting for them to be in the playoffs, but nobody was expecting Arizona to be a trash team either. They were probably going to be around that 6-8 win mark. But so far, they're 6-4. They're in first place in the NFC West, and they are winners of 4 straight. And they absolutely obliterated the New York Jets today. 31-6 was the final. And I got into it with one of my homies in prison. He was telling me to bet on the Jets, and I was telling him, hell no, I'm not about to bet on the New York Jets. I like the Arizona Cardinals. He was like, boy, you tripping taking the Cardinals over Aaron Rodgers. And I was like, no, you tripping taking one of the worst coached teams in the NFL over a team right now that's catching fire at the right time. Arizona is no pretender. They're no fraud. This team is actually legit. Their defense isn't all that great, but they do get big stops when it matters the most, and they haven't allowed a touchdown in their last 2 games. And they also have big wins over the Chargers and the 49ers, who right now are in the thick of the playoff chase. Kyler Murray, though, has been the big story for Arizona this year. He quietly is playing MVP level football. He has the second best touchdown interception ratio in the league at 12-3, which is only second to LaMarvelous. He has the second best quarterback rating in the league, and he has 371 rushing yards to go along with 4 rushing touchdowns. This is the best season of Kyler Murray's career. And when Kyler Murray is playing great football, the Arizona Cardinals are a really tough team to beat, and they probably could be an 8-win team if you had that game week 1 against the Buffalo Bills when you kind of just fell apart in the second half and the Bills came back and won in comeback fashion. You could have won that game. There were a few losses that the Arizona Cardinals took earlier during this season. That if the ball would have bounced in a different direction, they could have the second best record in the NFC, second behind the Detroit Lions. And they gave the Detroit Lions a pretty tough game. They only lost that game 20-3 or 20-13. So the Arizona Cardinals are one of those teams that every year we have somebody that goes from worst to first. The Cardinals could be that team this season. The NFC West is down. The Rams, they're getting healthier. They could heat up. But the Arizona Cardinals, the gap between them and the Rams, I don't feel it's all that big. Yeah, the Rams got a couple of better star players. They got better receivers, but Arizona has a loaded offense. You got that tight end, Trey McBride. He's a stud. James Conner is really underrated. Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of the best rookie wide receivers. You got a really talented offense. You got a lot of weapons. You got a lot of star power on there. The offensive line has played well. And when Kyler Murray's playing at this level, it's really hard to beat this team because he's in the same class that Lamar is. He's one of the greatest athletes that ever played the game of football. Not only is he one of the greatest athletes that the NFL has seen, but he's one of the greatest athletes in sports history. He's up there with guys like Bo Jackson. He was playing baseball too. He was the most dominant high school player in Texas high school football history. Kyler Murray, when he's on, Arizona is one of the better teams in the NFC. And what makes me super thrilled about Arizona's ceiling this year is that you don't know how far this team could go. They could be a one-and-done team, or they possibly could shock us all and make it to the NFC Championship. Because right now, this team right now, we don't really know what their ceiling is. Because right now, they're peaking at the right moment where, you know, you keep rattling off these wins like you have today against the Jets, and you're able to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, and you're able to come up with some upset wins to get some of the better teams on your schedule. We could be looking at a team that probably wins 11, 12 games, and they do make a little bit of noise in the playoffs. When you have a quarterback that's playing this well, there's not really any game that you don't have a chance to win. And the NFC is wide open right now. Outside the Detroit Lions, there's no clear-cut definitive number 2 right behind Detroit. If I were to ask you right now who's the second best team in the NFC, you're probably going to tell me the Philadelphia Eagles. Are you sold on Nick Sirianni as the head coach? Because I know he took them to the Super Bowl a few years ago, but that's when he had an all-star coaching staff. Jonathan Gannon was a defensive coordinator the year the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, and he's a current coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Shane Steichen, their OC, he's currently the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. I don't believe that the coaching staff is good enough for the Eagles to go as far as what people think they can, even though they do have arguably the most talented roster in football. I love Arizona a lot more than I love a team like the Philadelphia Eagles or the 49ers right now, because they're playing better football and they're a better coached team than what the 49ers and the Eagles are, in my opinion. Kyle Shanahan has made a couple of head-scratching decisions. Like, the 49ers also choked to the Cardinals as well. So the Cardinals, they're the biggest surprise of the league so far. The Minnesota Vikings may have a little bit of say in that, but with all the pieces that Minnesota has, I don't think that it's too surprising. And Sam Darnold, we know that he is a serviceable starter in the right situation. Arizona being 6-4, beating teams like the 49ers, getting close to beating the Detroit Lions and the Buffalo Bills, it shows me that this team right now, there's a lot more to go with this squad. There is a lot more potential that hasn't really been reached yet. And I'm eager to see where this team is going to be at over the next 3 to 4 weeks, because they got a really good chance to create some distance between them and the rest of everybody else in their division. And they could solidify themselves as the second best team in the NFC, possibly the best team. They almost beat Detroit. Don't forget that. If you can come close to beating Detroit, you definitely have the ability to beat them if you play them again. So look out for the Arizona Cardinals, man. They've been a really big surprise to me this year because I was not expecting them to play this well. Do you know what the New York Jets record was around this same time last year going into week 11 with Zach Wilson? They were 3-7. Do you know what their record is now going into week 11 this year with Aaron Rodgers? They're 3-7. So if you were 3-7 last year with Zach Wilson and you're 3-7 this year with Aaron Rodgers, that means nothing has changed. This team didn't get better. And in some capacity, you can say that the New York Jets got worse when you brought in Aaron Rodgers, who has proven to be nothing but a cancer to this organization. If you were 3-7 around this same time last year with Zach Wilson, and you're 3-7 now with a guy who was supposed to be a massive upgrade over Zach Wilson, it shows you that Aaron Rodgers has been really toxic to this Jets franchise. He got Robert Saleh fired, and before Robert Saleh got fired, this was a defense that was only giving up 17 points per game. Since Robert Saleh has been fired, they've gone from giving up 17 points per game to 25.8 points per game, and they still aren't winning. They're 1-4 since Aaron got Saleh kicked out the door. And it's funny how Aaron was quick to throw Mike Williams under the bus, and then all of a sudden, Mike Williams gets traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he catches the game-winning touchdown against the Commanders. Mike Williams scored just as many points by himself as what the Jets scored as a team against the Arizona Cardinals today. The Arizona Cardinals are a good team, but for the talent that the New York Jets have on that roster, nobody expected them to get clobbered and taking the pound town the way they did against the Arizona Cardinals. And Aaron Rodgers got tremendously outplayed by Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray was the more superior, more talented quarterback. Aaron Rodgers looked old. He looked slow. As good as what Aaron Rodgers is and the legend that he is, he can't overcome the dysfunction of the New York Jets organization while also contributing to part of it, because he made this situation a clown show when he got all of his former Packers buddies, Alan Lazard, you get Devontae Adams, you get that doofus, Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach. The New York Jets were never serious about winning. Because if you're serious about winning, you're not going to sacrifice control. You're not going to sell your soul to do so. When Robert Saleh, Woody Johnson, and the rest of the Jets front office flew all the way to the West Coast to get on their knees and suck up to Aaron Rodgers to get him to not retire and play for this franchise, they gave up all the power that they had. All the say-so went to Aaron Rodgers at this point. You had to listen to Aaron Rodgers every beck and call. And all that's done is put the Jets in a worse situation than what they already were when they had Zach Wilson at quarterback, because the difference between this year's team and last year's Jets team is that, yeah, you weren't that good with Zach Wilson, but the team showed a lot of fight. The team had a lot of heart. The team played with a lot of soul and passion. You don't see that this year. This team looks heartless. They look soulless because Aaron Rodgers has sucked all the energy out of the room. This is somebody who has came out publicly after a game in a post-game press conference and said that, we got to become one with the darkness. We just got to embrace the darkness. Yeah, any quarterback of mine that's saying that, any quarterback that's missing days of mandatory minicamp to go do drugs, isn't a guy who's a great leader. He's not somebody who's going to change the culture of my organization. You can say that the New York Jets are cursed, but Aaron Rodgers has done nothing more but further continue to the curse or contribute to the curse of the New York Jets not being able to win. And you've only beaten one team this season that's had a winning record. and that was the Houston Texans. And it turns out that one showed more about how bad the Houston Texans are than it shows how good you are. Because you turn around and you lose a game to a Cardinals team that you were favored to beat. Aaron Rodgers has been a cancer to the Jets organization with how he's gone about handling things with Robert Saleh. Listen, I get that Robert Saleh was not a great coach, but he's better than Jeff Ulbrich, and the performance on the field from this defense indicates that. You go from only giving up 17 points per game to allowing a whopping 25.8 points per game. That's coaching. And it's hard to win games in this league when you are a poorly coached football team, regardless of how talented your quarterback is. Aaron Rodgers, even if he still was in the peak of his career, he wouldn't be able to make the Jets any more better than what they already are because he got Robert Saleh fired. Robert Saleh knew what he was doing. He may not have been a winning football coach, but you probably wouldn't be 3-7 right now or 3-6 right now if you still have Robert Saleh. You probably could have beaten the New England Patriots. You probably could have gave Arizona a more competitive game if you would have kept Robert Saleh, because they wouldn't have been hanging 31 on you with ease with Robert Saleh still being the head man. He had this defense playing great football, inspired football as a matter of fact, and I still find it crazy how his defense held the Minnesota Vikings to their worst performance on offense at that time. And yet, Aaron Rodgers throws all these doggone interceptions. And yet, you're the one who gets the pink slip. The New York Jets are just a complete clown show. And Aaron Rodgers is the main reason for it. He's been a cancer to this organization because he's further set this franchise back than, moving this franchise forward. He was supposed to end the New York Jets fan base long-lasting history of pain and torture of always being disappointed watching this club. And all he's done is further contribute to the torment that Jets fans have been through all these years, because for once in a decade, Jets fans actually had a reason to be optimistic. They actually thought that they could be a Super Bowl contender this year if Aaron Rodgers at the helm. Everybody thought that Aaron Rodgers was the missing piece. And all Aaron Rodgers has been is the big part of why the Jets are what they've been for so many years. Dysfunctional, poorly coached, poorly ran, poorly operated. Everything about this franchise is bad. And Aaron Rodgers is not part of the solution. He's part of the problem. If I'm a new head coach and I take this Jets job and I'm a general manager and I take this job as well, I don't want Aaron Rodgers back. I just don't. With what he's done this season, getting these guys fired, not having this team playing better than what they were with Zach Wilson, it shows you that you're just better off without them than you are with them. You were better off sticking with Zach Wilson than you were Aaron Rodgers. The last thing I want to talk about before I get up on out of here. So I just got off the phone with Chicago PD. They told me that they're about to arrest Matt Eberflus for manslaughter for what he's been allowing to happen to Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams today was sacked 9 times in the Bears' 19-3 loss against the New England Patriots. This is the most sacks that a team has given up all season long. And Caleb Williams, he's been taking the beating back there behind that Bears offensive line. He got sacked 7 times on Sunday Night Football against the Texans. He got sacked 6 times a week ago against the Arizona Cardinals. And the Bears offensive line, they're allowing 3.5 sacks per game, which is 31st in the league in sacks allowed. You know who's right behind them as the worst team in the league in protecting their quarterback? The Cleveland Browns, who is giving up pretty much 5 sacks per game. That's not good. And you're attempting 33 passes per game, which is tied with Bo Nix for the most pass attempts by a rookie quarterback. The difference between the situation that Caleb Williams is in compared to Bo Nix is that Bo Nix actually has a good coaching staff. He has a head coach in Sean Payton who knows how to develop them, who knows how to get the best out of them. You don't have that in Matt Eberflus. When Matt Eberflus decided to say, you know what, let's move on from Justin and get Caleb Williams, he pretty much thought that getting a generational quarterback like Caleb would allow him to save his job because you will have Superman at quarterback. But what he failed to realize is that you still do have to coach this guy up. Caleb Williams still has the same habits now that he had a year ago at USC. He still kind of is the same player that he was in college. And the way Caleb played football at USC does not equate to winning football in the National Football League. And at this point, if I'm Ryan Poles, I might as well just fire Matt Eberflus now versus saving the inevitable for later to try to see if I can turn this season around, see if I can still salvage it while I have the chance, because you're 4-5 right now. You're not out of it yet. You know, at one point, it looked like the Bears were trending in the right direction, but all of a sudden, they started playing some actual good teams and not beating up on the sorry-ass Jacksonville Jaguars, and you just see how truly bad this team is because they're poorly coached. How do you have an offense with DeAndre Swift, Roman Dunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore, and you haven't had a passing touchdown in over a month? That's disgusting. You know, Matt Eberflus, he probably should have got the boot at the end of last season. And Ben Johnson should have already been a head coach of this team. It's no denying that Ben Johnson is going to get this head coaching job, and he's not going to turn it down. There's way too many weapons on this Bears team for this squad to be as bad as what they've been up to this point this season. And things are not going to change at this point. You are what you are. When people show you who they are, you got to believe them. And Matt Eberflus is a nice guy, great defensive mind, but just not a good head coach. And it's not good to try to develop a rookie quarterback with a league that has already kind of pivoted away from defensive-minded coaches. Look at what's transpiring with the Houston Texans with DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud right now. C.J. Stroud has not been playing good football. And if DeMeco Ryans was an offensive-minded coach, he could easier correct the offensive problems. He could easier help C.J. Stroud turn around. But when you're a defensive-minded coach, you're really reliant on making sure that your coordinators were great hires, because those are the dudes who are going to be responsible for developing your young quarterback. You see right now, Matt Eberflus has dug himself in the hole that he's not going to be able to climb out of, because you can't scapegoat anybody no more. You can't blame it all on Luke Getsy being an incompetent play caller. You can't blame it on Justin Fields being the worst fourth quarter quarterback in the league. Because when Justin Fields was playing for the Steelers this year, he was taking care of the football and he was playing winning football for the Steelers. He only got benched because it turns out Russell Wilson was just a million times better. But Justin Fields has shown enough to warrant coming back as the future at the quarterback position for Pittsburgh than what he ever looked with the Chicago Bears. With the Chicago Bears, you were always asking yourself, like, can this dude be the guy? With Pittsburgh, as a Steelers fan, I look at Justin Fields and how he played as a starter, and I say, oh yeah, he definitely can be the guy with a little bit more development. The Bears were always asking themselves, like, what can we possibly get out of Justin Fields? Is he ever going to reach his potential? I know Justin Fields can reach his potential under Mike Tomlin because he's getting better coaching and he's in a way better situation to develop than what the Bears are. The Bears are a team where quarterbacks just go to die. They're a graveyard for quarterbacks. Caleb Williams is having the same issues Justin Fields had. You mean to tell me the Bears just only draft quarterbacks that hold on to the ball too long and have turnover issues and play too much hero ball? How much of that is on the quarterbacks, and how much of that is just on this franchise inability to make good hires and find a way to develop their rookie quarterbacks? It's really nasty what they're doing to Caleb Williams. And I'm not going to say Caleb Williams is a bust, because if you were to put Caleb Williams on the Indianapolis Colts right now, they would be one of the best teams in the league. Bryce Young, if the Panthers were to ask anybody, hey, who wants this dude, nobody's going to warn them. But if you were to ask people right now, hey, like, who wants Caleb Williams? We just want a first-round pick for him. People are going to give that up for this kid in a heartbeat. And he's a warrior. I'm really impressed with how tough Caleb Williams is. I didn't think he was all that tough at USC. I don't have anything against Caleb Williams. He's actually one of my favorite players in the league. But I did think that he was a little bit soft. He was a little bit of a snowflake. But for him to be getting drilled the way he is behind that offensive line and to keep getting up, you know, still taking that beating play after play, he's earned a lot more of my respect. And you can't deny this guy's toughness. You know, he's breaking out of sacks. He's trying to do his best. I know he hasn't played good football neither. Like, you got to give him a little bit of the blame for how things have gone for the Bears. But, I mean, Caleb Williams, what do you want this brother to do? This brother's in hell, and the Chicago Bears are getting this brother killed. We need to save Caleb Williams. Can the NFLPA step in? Can they? Because at this point, I'm concerned about Caleb Williams' long-term health. The dude took a really bad hit and their blowout loss to the Cardinals when he should have been pulled in that game. He never should have been in position to take that hit in the first place because the game was out of reach. He's getting sacked left and right. How are you ever going to develop good habits? How are you ever going to become an elite quarterback, an elite passer of the ball if you can't trust your offensive line? The Bears are making Caleb Williams develop more negative habits due to how bad of a situation they have him in than they are helping him develop and reach his potential. This is why it's important of what team drafts you, because you can go to a team that has all the talent in the world, but if they're poorly coached, you're going to struggle. You know, coaching matters in this league, and a lot of people kind of overlook that. And to a degree, Caleb Williams has done a good job overcoming the dysfunction. When the Bears have gone up against inferior competition, he's dominated in those games. But when they go up against teams that are just as talented as what they are, but better coached, they just get outclassed. Save Caleb Williams. We need to get this hashtag trending. Save Caleb Williams before it's too late. Because it looks like the Bears are about to ruin another quarterback like they ruined Trubisky and like they ruined Justin Fields. Maybe Caleb Williams can demand a trade and get up on out of there before they ruin his career like they did Justin Fields. The good thing is, at least they did right by Justin and traded him into a franchise that can actually put him in position to thrive. The Bears just seem to be a franchise that puts their quarterbacks in position to fail, and that's why this franchise continues to underachieve and why they haven't had that much postseason success in a very long time. This is it for this episode of JT Sports Live. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Shout out to my guy Swifty. Shout out to Kate Roan. Shout out to Pays and Plays Podcast. Shout out to everybody that tuned in. Before we get up on out of here, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content. Follow us on Instagram at JTSports_ and on X at JTSports__. If you got any questions that you would like answered on our mailbag episode, send them in the DMs. And give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast from. Apple, Spotify, Amazon. The JT Sports Podcast is available. The link is down in the description down below. I appreciate everybody for